This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
So something we haven't done in a long time and won't get to do very often, again for a little bit, we're going to go over back-to-back wins in this episode of the Practice Squad Presents Throwback. A 27-20 win over Washington and a 40-32 win over Chicago. And Stroz, we spent so many episodes last season in the 2012 rewatch talking about games the Lions deserved to win outside of 3 or 4 plays. And I gotta tell you, this might be the counter. I don't think the Lions were terrible, but I'm not sure they were really the better team in this game outside of a couple plays.
I think that is probably the most accurate assessment of this first game that we watched. And you could possibly foreshadow parts of that second game that we end up watching as well. They end up leaving this watch with 2 wins, and this Washington game, there were times where I was like, man, RG3 and Alfred Morris look like they could be something special. Well, Alfred Morris was, I thought, a pretty decent running back, and RG3, I mean, this is a guy who's coming off of a blown out knee the season prior in the postseason, and I thought he showed flashes of what he was his rookie year.
I didn't realize he came back so soon, because he looked very good, and his stats his second year in the league weren't very impressive. Mm-hmm. I didn't think Alfred Morris looked like anything special. I think Alfred Morris looked like a guy who got the benefit. You know, this was 2013. The read option wasn't a prominent play in the NFL at this time, and they absolutely ran it in Washington. Other side of the ball, though, something that stood out almost immediately. Washington sent the house play after play after play, and it was just, I mean, sometimes they were sending more than the Lions were blocking. Sometimes the Lions just couldn't pick up the block. I didn't think Stafford had a particularly great game in either one of these. I thought he was okay in the Washington game. I didn't like him in the Chicago game. But, oh my God, he wasn't even running for his life because guys were getting in too fast. You can't run for your life when by the time you've got the ball above your shoulder, there's somebody hitting you. And they were blitzing heavy, but the Lions were not prepared to respond to that.
No, at all. And I was like, O-line looked shaky on the first drive, and then it was the second drive, and then it was the third drive. The offensive line did look shaky in this game. I was really surprised when I came away from this game, and I sat down and kind of looked at the sacks to realize he was only sacked 1 time in this game. It felt like he was under constant duress, especially early in this game. I felt like the offensive line kind of did a couple things, whether they kept an extra tight end in or they were just a little bit more prepared for that second half. But man, that first half, it really felt like you said, they were bringing the house and they were getting home. They weren't really getting the sacks, but they were putting a lot of pressure and they were hitting Matt Stafford, making him very uncomfortable in this game, especially early on.
And he did end up throwing a very early, second possession, pick 6. Mm-hmm. Part of it was, I believe, the Lions trying to react to, a defense that was sending the house. Look, I said I didn't think Stafford played great in this one. I'm actually gonna make the pick 6 if you remember, I brought it into play this season, the rewind play of the game. Yeah, the rewind play of the game. It's a quick slant to Calvin Johnson. And I want to say this. I don't think Stafford faced deserves literally any blame for the pick 6 because it looks like this is pretty much a non-thought. This is catch the ball, Calvin slants, you hit him where he's supposed to be. Except D'Angelo Hall dominated Calvin Johnson off the line of scrimmage, which is not something you hardly ever see. But because of it, the ball is thrown and Calvin's not there. D'Angelo Hall is. And they're so close to the end zone, there's nobody to stop him on the way back. I thought the first possession the Lions couldn't do anything. That happened on the second possession. They responded a little bit offensively after that. But I just wanted to point out, I did think the pick 6 didn't fall on Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a great throw, but no, you're right. D'Angelo Hall, early in this game, owned Calvin Johnson. And look, he was a very good cornerback. I thought that the offense, in order to respond to the offensive line, looking as shaky as it looked, and to the pressure that Washington was bringing, I thought they started to move a little bit more quickly. You talked about them responding in that third drive, and I think what you've seen was a lot more 3-step drops, a lot more Stafford's going to get the ball out quickly, and I think what that kind of led to was a little bit of an issue of the drops. A lot of these wide receivers were targeted, and a lot of them had some drops. Calvin had a couple drops. I think Nate Burleson also had a couple drops. Scheffler had a couple drops in this game as well. And I really think that it was the drops that kind of stalled this offense out a little bit. I felt like this offense really could have got going, but they were trying to move a little bit too quickly, and that was to try to compensate for some of that pressure that Matt Stafford was seeing up front and that offensive line was just letting through, that they had no answers for.
It's funny because you bring up Calvin Johnson with a couple drops, and I don't usually look at the stats until we go to do the show.
Mm-hmm.
I just watch the game, take my own notes, and I was surprised to see the numbers that Calvin Johnson had. I didn't end up writing it down, but I did have the thought. I think you start to see a little bit of wear on Calvin from 11 to 12. We talked about how he was so special all the time in 2011. And in 2012, he had the receiving record, but I think, honestly, a lot of that was circumstance. Look, Calvin didn't play a single year of his career in which he was not an elite wide receiver. But I actually think in 2012, you saw a little bit of that consistency drop off. And I thought watching this game, he had an opportunity for an incredible catch in the back of the end zone. No, it would have been an incredible catch, but early on in Calvin's career, and I'd say at least up until 2012, he had a routine history of catching the incredible pass and maybe sometimes lacking focus on the easy one. It's one that hit two hands after a dive in the back of the end zone. He couldn't get it. It didn't end up mattering, obviously, but I just thought that you saw a very small step back from Calvin Johnson, at least so far this year.
No, and I think that's an accurate assessment of his performance through, 3 weeks now. And this game, I think, is really telling of it because this is one of those games where he catches about 50% of his targets, whereas normally you can count on Calvin Johnson catching anywhere from 80 to 90% of whatever's thrown at him. And this just wasn't one of those games. And you're right. I pretty much do the same thing. When you go to, I watch the game for what it is, and I take my notes and I make my assessment on the play and the plays that take place and unfold in front of me. It's very rare that I ever stop to go check out what the stats were in a game. I usually save that for either the very, very end, or I save it for when we're doing this podcast just before we go on. Just, I don't know, maybe draw a correlation to something that I noticed during the game. And when we were going to open up this segment, you had mentioned, like, what was Calvin's stats? What did he do? And I was like, I don't think he had a very good game. And surprisingly, he was 7 for 115 with a touchdown. And it feels really underrated. Like, that's a really good game, but that feels really underrated. And it doesn't feel like he did that in this game. And it was because he was targeted 13 times.
Which is admittedly something that happens with Calvin a lot. You don't always catch just how good of a game he had, because a lot of times it looks effortless. After the slow start, Lions get on track on a drive that I'm not sure I've ever seen a higher percentage of yards come from one guy and doing it on multiple plays. Joyce Bell did everything on the
He was a stud. He was the stud on this drive.
He caught a 3-yard pass that he turned into a 50-yard pass. It looks like his long was only 47 or 37, but it looked a hell of a lot longer than that.
But that was just it was a screenplay that he just trudged along and just took it, what felt like the distance.
And he ran the ball for probably a good 20 yards on this drive. He went the whole way. It was a drive that started on the 15, and I believe Joyce Bell, I'm not kidding. I think he accounted for everything except for one, I want to say screen pass to Nate Burleson. And you didn't have Reggie in this game, so Joyce Bell being able to do that was probably necessary in coming away with this one.
When this game started, I was surprised. Like, this is one of the games that Reggie Bush ends up missing, and I'm thinking it goes back to last week. I think it might have been an ankle injury. I don't remember exactly, and I watched the condensed version, so I didn't get the initial preview of him not being in this game. But what I thought was nice was you could lean on, and this shows you the talent that Joyce Bell has. You can lean on Joyce Bell in this game. Again, not an elite running back, but he is a damn good running back who makes damn good plays time and time again. I thought what you got too is you got to see a little bit of a flash of Theo Riddick. They tried to work him in there. Obviously not really prepared.
Yeah, he was pretty much
yes, he didn't do anything, but it was some nice foreshadowing because you have this player who is nowhere near as good as what Reggie Bush is. Nowhere near. But he's a guy who gives you a similar, I want to say, talent traits that Reggie Bush does. He can catch out of the backfield. He can run a little bit. He's a little bit shifty. So I thought it was nice that they kind of worked him in as well.
Just a couple more notes on offense. I'm convinced, I said Titus Young was Tyreek Hill light if he stays sane. Ryan Broyles was going to be better than Nate Burleson. I mean, I'm not saying superstar, but Nate Burleson had his role as a Lion. But when Ryan Broyles came on the field and got his looks, he was the same style of receiver. I think he was quicker.
I think he was a little bit more elusive than Nate Burleson. But yeah, no, he looks
reliable hands, but still pretty reliable.
I thought he would have been the perfect complement. He would have been the guy who would have been great to take the place of Nate Burleson when Nate Burleson moves on. And it's funny that we bring up Nate Burleson because it's after this game that he has this pizza incident where he ends up missing a large portion of this season. It was this year in 2013.
Okay, so we thought it was last year because he missed.
We did.
A large chunk last year. I don't remember what he missed last year for. The only offensive note I have left, Joseph Aurier. Only one catch, but a 5-yard touchdown. Stafford basically treated him like he was Calvin Johnson. He threw it up and said, hey, please go get this because I'm getting murdered. And he went up and got it. And look, they only won this one by 7, but it felt like they won by less. Every touchdown, every big play felt so important.
I think it's just because the score was so damn close. Like, the Lions could never pull away in this game, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if it was just something that the offense couldn't execute. I'm not 100% sure. But this game, the score kept it so close, and it felt like Detroit was a better team through parts of this game.
I don't think they were. I think the first half, it was a toss-up, maybe leaning Lions. In the second half, they gave up only 6 points. I think they probably should have given up 20. The Redskins were driving with ease. Second half defense fell apart, which is surprising because I think the defense overall through 4 games has looked really good. But they were useless in the second half. Every pass was wide open. Robert Griffin was tearing them up on the ground. They had a drive that they got bailed out on a fumble by Robert Griffin.
Right. I think that was a big turning point in this game.
Well, but then the following possession, Robert Griffin threw a touchdown to a wide open man on a deep ball, and he dropped it. They got bailed out by Washington mistakes. They didn't force either of those plays.
The fact that they were able to capitalize on those, because that fumble ends up leading to 3 points, a big field goal in the fourth quarter, and then you're right, they end up coming back down. They throw a touchdown, what looks like it would be a would-be touchdown. The receiver ends up fumbling the ball in the end zone. It wasn't the fact that the Lions capitalized on these turnovers, but they didn't allow it to really hurt them. And I think like I said, during stretches of this game, I think the Lions were the better team. I don't think they were ever good enough to pull away, which was really weird because Washington was an okay team, but I don't know why the Lions couldn't put them away. On paper, I think Detroit's a way better football team.
One final note I had on this one, Glover Quinn. It takes a lot on defense to notice one player all over the field all the time. Glover Quinn, how many tackles did he have in this one? I don't even really care how many tackles he had. I saw 27 all the time. Only had 6, but he was just noticeably everywhere.
Yeah, no, he played an excellent game. I want to go back to your comments on Joe Fourier. So in my notes, it was probably after that touchdown, or it might have been another look that he had, but he's such a weapon. Like, he is such a big presence. He's just a big guy, right? He's got a big body. He's got good hands. He's got a lot of height. He is just a massive man.
And from memory, he was good at using that body. Sometimes, like Chris Durham's a good example. Chris Durham was a big dude too. But some guys just don't play like it. Joe Fourier played like a big dude.
What did you think about Jim Schwartz after the win? So the Lions went 0-21 up until this win in Washington. Jim Schwartz at the very, very end, I don't know if you noticed it, takes off his headset, and I'm pretty sure he said, fuck yeah. I'm not 100% positive, but he took his headset off and he chucked it, and he threw it so hard, like he was spiking a football.
It's who it was.
And I loved it. I loved every minute of that.
Well, and that's why even if you even we rewatched 2012 and said they were a playoff team with a better coach, it's still hard to hold things against him. When I saw that across the bottom of the screen, Lions first, it was the franchise's first win in Washington. They were 0-21 in Washington, which I guess, let me rephrase this because I only read it across the bottom. I don't necessarily know what that stat line was, but they said the Lions first win in Washington. So I don't know if that's at that stadium, if that's ever, but they were 0-21 in their last 21 tries, so it might be ever. And I try not to be the guy who reads too much into things, but I really got the vibe while he was here that Jim Schwartz bought into being a Lion. And I don't doubt Jim Schwartz was aware of that. And I don't think that's normal. I think most of the time, and I also, if he said he didn't know that, I would believe him. But I think generally speaking, like, you've only been with the team for 3 or 4 years. You only care about what's happened in your 3 or 4 years. Whether or not that was the case with him, with Washington, as a whole, Jim Schwartz felt like, and honestly still feels like, a part of the Lions family.
He seems to be a guy who totally embraced being an underdog.
I think if he succeeded elsewhere, I think Detroit fans would feel good for him.
I think so too. I think he was a guy who lived to erase a lot of the bad memories for Detroit fans, right? So, not winning in Washington, struggling to get wins in Green Bay, not winning on Thanksgiving. These are all things that the Lions struggled to do until Jim Schwartz showed up.
Did he win in Green Bay? I thought Caldwell broke that.
I thought it was Jim Schwartz.
I don't know. I thought
it might have been Caldwell. But he seemed to be a guy who relished going through and erasing some of those albatrosses that hung around the necks of Detroit Lions fans and the Detroit Lions organization. And I love that. I love that underdog mentality that, F you, we're here, and you know what, we're not going to shy away from what we are and who we are. This is what it is. And I love seeing that excitement and him be legitimately pumped up and throwing his headset, which I thought was funny, because they were able to eke out a win over Washington. I want to know who your stud is.
So, Glover Quinn is the only other name I would have considered, but because I mentioned him specifically earlier because I knew he wasn't my stud, I'm going to give it to Joique Bell. And honestly, he didn't do a ton outside of one drive, but prior to that drive, the offense had not gotten anything going. And I mean anything. And that drive, he single-handedly carried them to the end zone. Nobody else on offense really stood out. We both said we didn't think Calvin did as well as his numbers said. Fourier only had that one catch, although I thought the touchdown was big. I thought the defense as a whole sucked. I'm adamant I don't think they deserve to win this game. I think this is as bad as a lot of the losses that they had last year.
I'm gonna go with Joique Bell on this one. Same thing. Like you said, he had that one drive that was awesome and really seemed to kind of kickstart part of this offense. I don't think the O-line was very good. I think they put Matt Stafford in a bad spot all game long. I don't think Calvin, even though his stat line says he did a really good job, I don't think Calvin played great at all. I don't think Nate Burleson, even though Nate Burleson had more yards than Calvin Johnson, I don't think he played great at all. That defense was, like you said, questionable at best. So I'm gonna go Joique Bell as well, because I think he was probably the stud of this game. He was the best player on that field.
Who's your dud?
Dud is that shaky ass O-line. That O-line, like I said, did not help Matt Stafford out at all in this game. I think that O-line led to that first turnover. I think that O-line led to them having to change the playbook on the fly. And instead of being able to do any deep dropbacks, letting anything develop downfield, everything had to go underneath and everything had to be a quick out.
I think that we are on a roll this season. I don't know if we've agreed on every stud and dud, but we've agreed on a lot. I'm giving it to the offensive line as well. Washington did bring pressure, but I actually rewinded a lot of plays on this game because there were way too many times I watched a defender go untouched to the quarterback. And I watched at least 2 plays, and I want to mention him specifically, where Dominique Raiola was helping double team a man while somebody else came down the middle untouched. I don't think it was all on the offensive line. I think that, honestly, I think some of it fell on Stafford. I think there were times they brought too many and Stafford didn't react by hitting a hot route. But ultimately, I just thought that the offensive line didn't even do their job when they did have enough bodies to get the ball. Moving on to the next game, the Lions win 40-32 over the Bears at home. I'm kind of curious to hear where we saw things differently. I didn't think the Lions were perfect in this one, but I felt pretty comfortable from start to finish. Well, that's not true. But once the Lions took over in this game, I felt comfortable. Reggie Bush is back, and he's back to being electric. And I gotta ask you, I'm gonna skip way ahead in my notes. This is one of my latest notes. But he's electric early on. I think he had one of the most memorable runs of his NFL career in this game. You're looking at me like you don't think so. So you didn't remember, it's a handoff to the left, holes open.
This is the one where he does a little zigzag.
Ground.
Yes.
Calvin blocks a man on the outside and he beats everyone else to the outside.
Yep.
I don't think it was the best run of his career. I think it was one of the prettiest, and I think it was one of the most memorable. And I'm actually surprised that you didn't immediately agree because, like, I didn't remember this game, but I saw that play, and as it was happening, remembered it.
So in this game, I thought he had 2, maybe 3 really nice runs. So that run, yes, that run specifically, that was probably one of his prettiest runs that he had as a Detroit Lion. There was another one that he had where, he ends up going through the middle and everything's supposed to open up to the left and he hits the hole and he takes like 2 steps to the left. Next thing you know, he cuts right and he ends up going probably about 13, 14 yards and he's just kind of spinning guys around before he gets tackled. And I thought that one was a really nice one as well. But no, you're right. He is back and he is absolutely electric. From the moment he steps foot on the field, he is lighting it up.
And so while watching this game, we just talked about how we don't usually look at the game stats while we're watching. I actually stopped after that touchdown run to look at his career stats because I have something to say now that I never realized before rewatching this game. I believe Reggie Bush was done wrong in his career. And the reason being, he has 3 years in his entire career where he puts up feature back numbers. That being said, he only has 3 years in his entire career where he gets feature back looks. And what made me think about it is in college, we talked about it on this podcast. Reggie Bush was special at getting to the edge. But the thing is, that doesn't do it in the NFL. There is literally next to nobody in the NFL who wins by getting to the edge. You might get a couple yards out of it, but guys are too fast. 3 games in, to 4 games into the season, but 3 games into watching Reggie, he's routinely beating everybody to the edge. He's doing things that you don't do in the NFL. And it makes me think, I don't know if he wasn't getting enough touches or teams just didn't know what they needed to do. Cause some of this I think is, that touchdown run he had was wide open for 7 yards to the left. He did the rest by cutting it back to the right. But I think something gelled here where they knew what they needed to do to set him up to succeed. He had 2 good years in Miami where he played this way, came to Detroit, had 1 year in Detroit where he played this way. I didn't actually realize he took a big step back next season. And I think some of that might have been injury. But I just don't, like, Reggie Bush will never be remembered as an elite NFL running back. And I'm sitting here watching this, and I just, Stroz, name me the NFL running back who became really damn good 6 years into his career. Name me another one. Because Reggie Bush was not that good until the 6th year of his career.
Yeah, I don't have anybody.
That's because it doesn't happen.
I don't. Yeah.
If you're running back, you have it. And for some reason, he didn't have it for 6 years. He wasn't useless. He had a role, but all of a sudden, this dude's getting into his late 20s, where nowadays, in your late 20s, if you're not special, teams are looking to move on from you. And all of a sudden, in his late 20s, he started to put on a display of high-level running back play.
Well, I think that's the thing. So, like, when he was in New Orleans, he was primarily used as a gadget running back, or he was that third down back where they're going to throw you the ball out of the backfield. I mean, when he was in New Orleans, he regularly had, 30 to 50 catches every single season? I mean, his rookie year and his sophomore year in New Orleans, he had 88 and 73 catches out of the backfield. And the year he had 73 catches out of the backfield, he only played in 12 games. So I think durability early on in his career might have been an issue. Playing, 2007, he only had 12 games that he played in. 2008, he had 10. 2009, he had 14. 2010, he only had 8 games that he played in. And then he goes to Miami and he plays 15 and 16 games, only to come to Detroit and play 14. And then you're right. In 2014, that was his second year in Detroit. He only played 11 games again. So I think durability might have been part of the issue with Reggie Bush, and that might have been why he didn't get those looks like you're talking about. But the thing is, when he did get the looks, and he was able to stay healthy, he was a featured back. Or he performed like a featured back. So I think it's maybe just a mix of a coaching staff knowing what they had, knowing that he's an electric player, and if you get him the ball, he's going to be able to do damage, whether it be through the air or on the ground. So how do we preserve this guy? How do we keep this guy healthy? I remember when he was in New Orleans, I remember thinking to myself, man, he is so damn good. Because every time he touches the ball, he does something crazy. Why don't you get him the ball more? And then I think it was probably right around the 2010 season where he only played half the season. Oh, this is why. because he gets banged up. And once he's banged up, he's totally useless to you. So it's this balance of trying to preserve his body, preserve what he can do for you.
I guess that's fair, and he was heavily used in the passing game. But I just look at, like, his last 2 years in New Orleans, he had a total of 100 runs in 22 games. And that just seems foolish, because Reggie Bush, I gotta tell you, man, 4 games in, this team's 3-1, and Reggie Bush is probably the MVP. I just called a running back the MVP of a Lions team. I mean, only 4 games in, but just let that sink in.
You know what? I think that's something that we have to do too when we go to review the end of the season. You just said that, and I don't know if we picked MVPs for the previous 2 seasons. I think we should start to incorporate that.
In 2012, I think. You could say Calvin Johnson, but I think Matthew Stafford was asked to play with an arm tied behind his back with the other receivers he had. Yeah, we can check back in on that. Boy, I didn't have a ton of notes, but I jumped wildly all over the place in this game.
So I want to take it back to what the defense was doing. I thought the defense did a great job really bowing up on third down. I thought, especially early on in this game, because this game seems to slip away from this defense in the fourth quarter, but through the first 3 quarters, I thought the defense did an incredible job of giving Chicago enough rope, and then when they had to come up with a critical third down, they had no problem stepping up and forcing the issue, and either forcing them to punt the ball on fourth down, forcing a turnover, or causing enough disruption to where they broke up whatever play was going to happen.
Well, you know what's funny is this game at the end of the first quarter was 3-3. Nobody was really getting any push. Nothing was really happening. The Bears added a few more field goals early in the second. I think the Lions might have added 1. I don't really remember this game, but there was a play early to mid-second quarter where Andre Fluellen, a guy we haven't even mentioned yet, who's a part of this Lions depth on the front line, blows up a running play in a way very few do. And I went back to see who it was, because I thought it would have been Nick Fairley maybe. But no, it was Andre freaking Fluellen. He's in the backfield before Jay Cutler hands the ball off. Doesn't make the tackle, but he destroyed the line of scrimmage. So Matt Forte gets stopped for a loss. It was a 2nd and 10. Gets stopped for a loss. Then the Bears have their first false start of the season, pushes to 3rd and 15. They force an incomplete pass. And from there, the Lions take over. Michael Spurlock gets a big return. Lions score on a quarterback sneak that Stafford almost fumbles. Well, does fumble, but recovers it. The very next offensive play for the Bears, Jay Cutler throws an interception return back to about the 5 or 6 yard line. No, it was the 1. And, I don't remember who took that one in, but the Lions take that one in as well. Reggie Bush? No, it was a Calvin Fate. And also the Lions just jumped on him. And that was where the game really changed. And it's funny, because when I wrote that down, the Andre Fluellen stop, I didn't remember this, but just, it felt like a big moment. That felt like a turning point. And the Lions went on, I believe, a 21-0 run after that play.
Yeah, no, it was a big stop. And that defense got rolling. Once that defense got rolling, it allowed the offense to kind of take off, because you've already said it, right? So, big defensive stop, ends up leading to the Calvin play, right? So Matt Stafford ends up recovering his own fumble for a touchdown, which was kind of a funny play. Then Calvin scores a touchdown. Like within a matter of moments, Detroit is up on Chicago. So you end up then you have you have a Reggie Bush run. So before you're at halftime, Detroit just leaps out in front of Chicago and is in utter control of this game. And it was in part because of the defense putting the offense in a position to really capitalize. I mean, when you go back and you look at the total yards in this game, and you look at what Matt Stafford did, compared to what Chicago does, remember, through 3 quarters of this game, Detroit really has it in control. But to that point, the yards aren't really there, but that's because Detroit's playing on short fields all game long, or up into that third quarter. So I think that's a tip of the cap to what that defense does early on in this game.
I also do want to mention, oh, by the way, Andre Fluellen stop in the backfield was he didn't stop, blowing it up, was my rewind play of the game. Specifically because I needed to go back and see who that was. Because it was incredible. And I do, by the way, think it played a factor in the following, the false start that followed, especially given it was their first of the year. I only got a couple more notes on this one. They had a 4th and 1 inside the 5, where their offense was rolling. They kicked the field goal. That bothered me. I never liked that in the first place, but especially when your offense is rolling. I thought Stafford was bad in this one. Like, really bad. I don't think the numbers speak to how bad he was. 23 of 35, 242, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. I thought he was constantly missing guys. Impressively, Brandon Pettigrew somehow managed to have a good game in a bad Stafford game. Somebody who we haven't talked about having a good game in a long time. But no other receiver really did anything notable. I don't know, man. This was the Reggie Bush game for the second time in 4 games.
Yeah, Reggie Bush was pretty special. I thought this game was frustrating down the stretch at the very end because Detroit dominates it, like I said, for 3 quarters. And then it feels like whether it's just the offense can't stay on the field so the defense gets tired, or the defense just kind of mailed it in the 4th quarter. You end up allowing the Bears to score 16 points, and all of a sudden, they're right back in this game, and it comes down to whether or not they can execute an onside kick. And they don't, thankfully, but really quick, this game got really, really tight at the very, very end, and I was just like, how is this happening? I was really frustrated because it felt like Detroit was in complete control of this game, and they were just gonna cruise to a win, and then all of a sudden, like, if you blinked, it was like, holy hell, Chicago's back in this game and they could win this.
I really felt like this game was in danger. I think this is the kind of game that you would have probably pointed out had it been flipped, that that they were playing prevent. I don't think the Lions were playing prevent, but I think the Lions were perfectly happy to let the Bears slowly move down the field. Especially when it was a 16-point game, because even if the Bears do score 2 touchdowns, they gotta get 2 2-point conversions. And you're never expecting the team to pick up an onside kick. You don't want to give it to them, but the Lions were in a spot where even if they gave up the onside kick, the Bears still needed to score a touchdown and a 2-point conversion. And by the way, Joey Bell fumbled, up 16 too.
No, he did. I didn't think he played especially well in this game.
He had 7 carries, 12 yards. It was probably one of the worst I've seen him have.
Something I noticed about Joey Bell, he's not very good at getting to a spot. Last year, or maybe it was the beginning of this season, he had that long leap to the end zone. He had basically a yard to get. He gets stopped. Whenever there is a close yardage situation, he's got to get to a spot. Joey Bell's not very good at it.
Alright, I have one last note, and it's kind of funny. I feel like we need to at least point out, he did have a good return, but Michael Spurlock hasn't been a good kick returner, after all the flack we gave Stephon Logan literally all last season. But can I tell you why that's not memorable? Because Stephon Logan was a returner for the Lions for 3 years. Michael Spurlock does not finish the season as the punt returner / kick returner for this team.
Did you look this up?
No, remember how we talked about how this was a memorable season?
Yeah.
They actually get a couple kick returns for touchdowns in this season from their future returner. Do you remember who it was?
I don't remember.
I'm not 100% sure of his first name. I believe it was Justin Ross.
Not ringing a bell at all. So this will be interesting. This will be something to look for as the season unwinds.
I think he breaks at least 1. It might have been 2 in that Eagles snow game.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
I don't memorable moments in this season.
Yeah, I don't remember this. I do want to make a note real quick about Darius Slay. So Darius Slay did not play in the Washington game. He does play in this game. So Slay had 3 passes completed on him. 1 was a big one. He also had 1 pass breakup. I thought watching Darius Slay play, he did not play exceptionally well at all. But what I found was Darius Slay was always in the right place. If he had a little bit better technique and a little bit more strength, I think he's competing for these balls and he's disrupting these wide receivers. So you can see early on, Darius Slay has the fundamentals and he has the tools to be a really, really good cornerback. I thought in this game specifically, he was exposed a little bit, but I think there's something good here that you can build upon.
I didn't necessarily catch it in this one, but there are definitely moments you see Darius Slay making nice plays. And I think it'll be really interesting to watch as we move into next year how quickly he made the jump, because he did have moments where he had some nice plays in this season so far. Anything else before we get to studs and duds?
Nope.
Who's your stud?
Stud is going to be the defense. They've had 3 interceptions, 1 forced fumble for a touchdown, as well as 3 sacks. I thought the defense played really, really well, like I said, for 3 quarters.
So I'm actually going specifically with the defensive line. The fumble for the touchdown was a game-changing play, but they also, man, I gotta tell you, watching these Lions-Bears games, 2 a year, they're all the damn same. It doesn't matter who's on the defensive line. They're murdering Jay Cutler all the time. You gotta feel for this man whenever he plays the Lions. To be fair, he did throw 3 interceptions, so I have no issue with giving it to the whole defense. And like I said, well, you thought they let up a little bit in the fourth. I thought some of it was by design, not to the extent that it happened. But I also don't think that they were too stressed. But I also thought some of those interceptions came because the defensive line was such a threat. And yeah, that fumble for a touchdown was a big deal in this one. So I went defensive line.
My dud is going to be the defense as well. I thought they had a complete letdown in the fourth quarter.
I don't know that one, man.
Dude, look, I got nervous at the very end of this game because I felt like Chicago was rocking and rolling. I felt like they got their momentum and they got their groove. It was a little bit late in the fourth quarter when they finally figured it out, but it could have been by design. I just felt like the defense gave up way too much and made this way too close of a game.
So my dud's going to be Matthew Stafford, and he's had some bad games. Certainly not his first dud. I think, in fact, through 2 full rewatches and now 4 games, I think I've given Stafford probably a good 6 or 7 duds. I'll say this: he didn't lose the game. He took care of the ball for the most part, aside from 1 interception. And that interception, I don't want to call it fluky, but it got knocked around a bit before it actually got caught. But I thought he was unimpressive. And unimpressive is good enough to give him a dud. This has to be one of a handful of games. I think you could probably count on one hand the amount of times that Matthew Stafford was carried by his run game and or defense. If you replace Matthew Stafford with, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the most bland quarterback we've ever seen. You have a good thought? Bland
quarterback.
Case Keenum.
Sure, Case Keenum. I was gonna go Alex Smith, but Case Keenum.
So I thought Alex Smith too, but he kind of had. It's weird. These bland quarterbacks all have one really good year. Alex Smith, I would say, in San Francisco. Case Keenum in Houston, not Minnesota. Just anybody. You just needed a quarterback who wasn't going to lose you the game. Stafford did that much, but it was enough to win because the running back, Reggie Bush, and the defense, I thought were both incredible.
I think it's fair. I thought the defense played really, really well in this game, at least early on, and then I thought there was a lapse. I don't know. Stafford didn't play great. I don't have a problem with you giving him the dud. We're at this point in his career where you want to start to see him do more and start to maybe take a game over. And I know we get that later on in his career, but I think now, if you're a fan and you're watching this, you're like, all right, cool. When's he going to take that next step? When are we going to have that next step for him? And I think that's what we're kind of waiting for.
All right, coming up next week, have a loss against Green Bay in Green Bay, but still don't have to watch back-to-back losses. They get a win at Cleveland to move 4-2 on the year. That's what's up next.